Next item on our agenda tonight is the proposed cell phone stipend for elected officials. That'll be presented by Gary Riedner.
If you'll forgive me for my hoarse voice and sniffles, I will proceed. Thank you. As was presented to the Public Works Finance Committee, as the council knows, earlier this fall, a cell phone stipend was approved for city staff who were required to carry cell phones as part of their jobs. There were two parts to that stipend. One was $25 if you needed voice access, and another $25 if you needed data access for email, texting, that sort of thing. The policy prior to that was that the city would issue cell phones to those employees who needed cell phones as part of their jobs, and several employees utilized their personal cell phones for city business. We budgeted both in the non-departmental budget and enterprise funds, special revenue funds, for these cell phones that previously were budgeted in that we had city-issued cell phones and then city programs. When the stipend was switched to, those funds were utilized to pay the stipend, and the program has progressed better than we expected. In fact, we're spending less money, and it's not a significant amount, but it's less money than we had budgeted for improved service. In fact, there's been sufficient monies saved in the budget that there are sufficient funds if the elected officials would like to extend that same program to themselves. And the basis for that, I've had several council members, elected officials, who have approached me asking how the program works and whether or not it could or should be extended to elected officials. In looking at it, there is budgetary authority. We've worked it out with Jesse Flowers and Don Palmer, our finance director. Don and Jesse is our information systems manager. And we've determined there are sufficient funds in order to extend that to the elected officials. The program and what we look at as I as city supervisor and the department heads in authorizing any sort of cell service to city employees is whether it is necessary to have that sort of connectivity. With elected officials, you are not issued city cell phones. Therefore, if you utilize cell phones, take city business on your cell phone or receive city emails through your smartphone, then certainly that expenditure can be justified. So with that, there is capacity. It is within budget. It can be extended. We're looking for direction from the council.
Thank you, Gary. Dan, this was reviewed by the Public Works Finance Committee.
Yeah, and the consensus was that it was felt to be an appropriate expense because a lot of the council members do use their personal cell phones. There's a lot of city business that does take place on it. There was some concern about if we remember, the email access and public records requests and what could and couldn't be asked for in such a request, if we were using your personal phone for this. And I think Gary explained it well enough that, email is on the city server if it's coming to your city account, so that's all taken care of there. And I don't think that phone calls, I think Gary or Randy can elaborate on it further, but that's not as something that can be requested. And I don't know how this came up a little earlier today. I was talking to somebody. I don't know how this affects with text messages. How is that affected?
Well, if I may,
please.
I'd defer that to the city attorney. As he pointed out at the Public Works Finance Committee, that email that goes through the city server is maintained by the city, and therefore the city would respond to public records requests for those records on the city server. But regarding text messages and such, I would ask if Randy would be allowed to respond to that comment.
Andy?
Do I have to? That's a good question. I haven't thought it all the way through. If it's If the account is a private account and the telephones are related to that, then the custodian of the record would be that person who has that account with its, with whatever the phone system is. And it would be my interpretation that that would be the responsibility of the phone user relative to text messages. If those text messages come into the server of the city because they're received by somebody within the city, then the city would probably be responsible for being the custodian of that document once it got to us. And so phone calls that are recorded or email that's sent or text messages that are sent or received that are related to city business but that don't come into the custodian, the city as a custodian, would be just the responsibility of you people, even if you didn't have this reimbursement program. So if the city gets it, the city will respond to a public records request in the same way it does now. If we don't, then it's up to each person who has that account to be the custodian of that account.
Okay. Walter?
I think the pertinent part of this, and Randy can respond to this if he wishes to, is whether or not being paid a stipend for the use of the cell phones or data phones that we have would change the public record situation with us. In other words, would being paid a stipend open us to demands for information that we would have to produce that we wouldn't have to produce otherwise?
The answer to my question is no. It, in my opinion, does not change the status at all from what it is now by simply receiving a reimbursement stipend from the
We have
city.
certain exposure anyway.
Correct.
And if,
Yes,
if I
please.
may. The difference, I think, between what is being discussed here and the fact that, as the packet says, the city has implemented a cell phone program designed to provide cell phone access to employees who are required to have cellular access. I don't know that we are required to. If we wish to not have a cell phone, that's our business. On the other hand, the difference with us is that it makes us more efficient. I can work phone calls back and forth with staff. I can see emails from the city, from the staff, while I'm somewhere else across town or driving across town. I don't have to get back to my desktop computer to do it, and so forth. So I'm in favor of this. I think it's a matter of only fair. One point that I would like to make, where the proposal is for $50 per month for data phones, it's for $25 a month for cell voice only, and I'm not sure all of us come under the $50 amount. I think we should, as you did, Gary, look at the budget in light as if all 7 of us had data phones, but I think in reality, at least for the moment, the amount the city will be reimbursing will be slightly less.
Sue, I saw your hand next.
I see it as if it's a stipend that's not a reimbursement, to me, and my question is, then I'd have to claim it as income and pay taxes on it is one thing. And 2, if it's not income, if it's a reimbursement, how the heck am I going to figure out what percentage of my phone calls are on city business
Gary?
If I
for
may.
that reimbursement?
What prompted a large part of the employee program was the fact that the IRS had taken the position that if you utilized a employer-issued cell phone and service for personal use, it was like using a business car, your employer's car for personal use. You had to keep records and you had to pay taxes on it. Since that time, the IRS has since reconsidered, and Congress has, I believe, stated that that is not the case. However, the other piece of it was that we had folks who were using city cell phones for essentially personal cell phones, and that wasn't correct either. So it just took care of a multitude of evils. And what it did was employees were paid the stipend through their paychecks. So employees end up paying taxes on that anyway. So even though it's $50 for a data phone, after you pay taxes on it and everything else, it's less than that. But it seemed to work out pretty well, and people were fairly comfortable with it, along with the discussion that most people have cell phones anyway. The question is, should you use your personal cell phone for employer-type business? So it just seemed to answer a lot of those questions. With city council, or elected officials, your salaries are regulated by statute, and they can only be adjusted every 2 years, just prior to an election, and will not be implemented until after that election. So in the case of council, it would be a reimbursement. So every month, you would come in and verify that you had voice and or data, and submit a reimbursement for either $25 or $50 for that month. Now, whether that is taxable, you'd have to take that up with your accountant, or what percentage of it is taxable. But in essence, what it is a reimbursement to you for giving the city access and conducting city business on your personal cell phone and or data phone.
So if we pass this, like, people can opt out and say, I don't want to bother with it.
Absolutely. If a council member does not want to take it, you certainly don't have to, and you can continue to do city business on your personal cell or data phone. That is a personal choice the individual can make.
Wayne?
I think, Gary, I think you said it. You know, being an elected official is kind of an interesting situation. We're kind of a quasi-employee of the city in the fact that we're paid a certain amount, but we don't receive any benefits. As an example, we receive no medical benefits whatsoever. We can have them if we want to pay for them out of our own pocket. We do get reimbursed mileage if we use our vehicles, but we all use our vehicles to go for numerous meetings around town. I don't think anybody claims mileage. If we go to Spokane, we'll claim mileage on a meeting. But when we start talking about a stipend or reimbursement for our cell phones, and I think that we're all certainly, I think as a whole, elected officials are deserving of that. But I think we need to ask ourselves, are we personally deserving of it? As an example, I upgraded my service a couple years ago, but it was my choice to do that. And I think the question that we would need to ask ourselves is, once we're no longer an elected official, will you downgrade your service? Will you use less service than what you have now? And so are you specifically using something for city business? And if that's the case, then absolutely you should be reimbursed for it. But once we're out of office, and if you keep the same service, then I guess that's a personal determination each of us will have to make.
Any other questions or comments? Tim?
I'm philosophically opposed to this. I think the justification from what I've heard so far from the council people that have spoken is correct. I bought a smartphone to accommodate city business, but I just don't think we should be taking additional money on the city's back to cover those expenses. So I'm going to vote against this.
Is there a motion?
If there's a motion.
Normally the chair of the committee that heard it makes the motion, but like Tim, I kind of had a problem with it to start with as well, and, as Walter and I found out when we first started this, amazing you get paid to have this much fun in the first place, so, but anyway, I'm uncomfortable making the motion on it. I will probably just abstain from the vote.
Yeah. So I might be the outlier here, but since I am included in the discussion, let me tell you that I travel a fair amount in my role as mayor, and I basically only check city email while I'm traveling, and I don't own a smartphone now, but with some of the trips coming up, I'd like to have one. But, for me, that $50 a month would make a difference.
Oh, it'd make a difference for me as well.
Yeah, sure. Tom?
I'd be happy to make the motion to allow elected officials to seek reimbursement for the use of their cell phones.
Okay, we have Tom's motion. Do I hear a
Second.
second? We have Walter's second. Any further discussion before voting? Okay, Walter, we'll start the roll call vote with you.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
I'll abstain.
Aye.
No.
So was that's 3,
3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1. Okay, so that sounds like we have 3 in favor. That's good enough? With an abstention? All right, the motion carries, barely.
Okay, if I could get a clarification as well. The policy that has been stated is $25 for voice, $50 for data. I would like some consensus of the council that that is your direction, that
Yeah,
that
I was-
policy be followed.
I was making the motion based on what was
Okay.
presented to us.
Thank you. Could I just get a consensus
And
from the
was
council?
that true with the seconder?
Yes.
Okay, and would you nod? if that-
Mirroring the city's policy with the employees.
Thank you.
Okay, and Sue, you voted aye on this?
Yeah, I'm not going to use it, but I feel that.
Was that your understanding, the 50 and 25 as well? Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everyone.